The world constantly tells us you need just a little bit more. But what if real peace isn't found in having more, but in learning to need less? Hi, I'm Rob West. What comes to mind when you hear the word wealth? For some, it means freedom. For others, it brings anxiety and pressure. Today, Jeff Manion joins us to explore how we can cultivate contentment in a culture that always craves more. And then it's on to your calls at 800-525-7000. That's 800-525-7000. This is Faith and Finance Live, biblical wisdom for your financial journey. Well, Jeff Manion is the teaching pastor of Ada Bible Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the author of an article in the latest issue of our Faithful Steward magazine titled Discovering the Power of Contentment. And that's our focus today. Jeff, we are so glad to have you back with us.
Rob, it's such a joy to be with you today.
Thanks for making the time. Jeff, in the article, you write that wealth confuses me. I want to start there. Why do you think that's an important place to start this conversation in your writing?
Oh, my goodness, Rob, it's just such a moving target. I mean, Chris and I started out in ministry when we were 21, tiny little church of 25 people. And by the way, if you're looking for a fast track to financial freedom, do not take a church of 25 people that refuses to get off the ground. I mean, Ada Bible Church is sizable today, but it took 7 years to get up to 100 people consistently. Wow. And so we lived simply out of necessity. Yeah. I mean, it was just always barely enough. But fast forward the tape, decades, and the church is now sizable. We did so many of the right things, set up an emergency fund, studiously avoided debt, and yet still I wrestle with this issue of contentment and sufficiency. And you would think, now that we're out of those days of shortage, dude, you must have nailed it. And I'm going, it is an ongoing struggle. Learning contentment in financial status of sufficiency is radically different than learning contentment in a season of shortage.
Yeah, but the common denominator for both is learning, and we can learn in different environments. And one of those environments you learned in, you called the desert classroom. Share that with our listeners.
Yeah, and the desert classroom refers to the Israelites. They were enslaved for generations in Egypt, right? And then under the leadership of Moses, they go out into the desert, and they have this 40-year detour in the desert. And that's where God provided for them every day with this food substance called manna, and basically kept them alive in the desert. But Rob, then there's this fascinating, for me, chilling and jarring conversation that takes place just when they're ready to leave the desert. And it's like Deuteronomy chapter 8. It's like when you get into the land of promise, the promised land, which was often called the land flowing with milk and honey. Right. They're going to trade in the desert for rushing streams and growing grain and flourishing grapevines and pomegranates and figs. And there's this warning, don't forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Yes. And you think, well, it would be automatic that their hearts would be drawn to worship once they get into this season of sufficiency. My friend, it's not. And it's like you're going to get into the land of promise. You're going to get into a nice house. Your flocks and herds are going to increase. And you're going to say, I think I did this. Yes. My strength did this for me. And it's like, do not forget the Lord your God. He is the one who even gives you the ability to grow wealth. And so again, that's part of the wealth confuses me thing. And just the shifting target is that when a financial status stabilizes, you've done the right things, debt's paid off, the student loans are gone, maybe paying off your mortgage, given consistently to retirement fund, it's kind of like, okay, right there, that is a dangerous moment. And you need to just double down on the journey of trust. And just remember, I know where my stuff comes from.
Yes. Wow, that is so powerful. Yeah, I'm thinking about those Israelites about to face their most significant challenge, prosperity. What is it about prosperity that makes it so difficult for us to understand the source of it and to navigate it? Well, we're talking today with Jeff Manion about contentment. It's a learned behavior, and we're going to try to help you with some of that learning today. Jeff is teaching pastor of Ada Bible Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The article is titled Discovering the Power of Contentment in the latest issue of our Faithful Steward magazine. We'll continue to unpack it just around the corner, and then your questions at 800-525-7000. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Today we're talking about finding contentment in every season of life. This is Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. Joining me today is Jeff Manion, teaching pastor of Ada Bible Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Jeff wrote an incredible article for the latest issue of our Faithful Steward magazine titled Discovering the Power of Contentment. Jeff, before the break, you were talking about what that looks like and the journey of learning that and drawing from Scripture and the Israelites. And as you know in the article, you also share about your personal journey of decluttering.
Oh,
I'm sure that's a topic that resonates with a lot of our listening audience. Why was that season so impactful for you, and what did you learn?
Well, I think what happens is stuff grows.
Yes.
It's like it multiplies and reproduces. And suddenly our lives are filled with all this stuff. And I don't even remember where some of this stuff came from.
Right.
And so I went through this 7-week exercise where I gave away 5 items a day for 7 weeks. It's like 210 items.
What?
And when I say gave away, I don't mean generosity. This was like getting rid of 36 CDs. I didn't listen to CDs anymore. And there they were hibernating, in a box in my basement.
Right.
A 40-piece dish set that we donated to a housing center that we hadn't used in like 2 or 3 years. And a drawer of T-shirts. It's like they followed me home from 5K races and conferences and events. It's enough to outfit a small village.
Right.
And so 210 items later, the experience I had was just, number one, coming in contact with the stuff that inadvertently surrounded myself with. But I felt 210 items lighter. Yeah. I felt richer for having less.
Right. Yeah. We can all resonate with that, and there's all plenty for us to declutter. So that's a great reminder. All right, Jeff, let's begin to dive into this idea of contentment a little deeper. I know in the article you reference Paul's words to Timothy, godliness with contentment is great gain. What does that look like in our lives today?
Yeah, I think the words that we are seduced by are the words there and then. That is, I will only be at peace there and then. I will only be fully alive there and then. When we're able to break away from this monotonous routine and go on vacation, there and then. When we're able to get out of this apartment and get into a house. When we're able to renovate this outdated kitchen and get into, a different kitchen, there and then. That's where life is. That's where we can be fully alive. And I think contentment, Rob, is learning to be fully alive to God, fully alive to the people around us here and now, not there and then. I think a critical word is before. The more fully alive I am to God and people while I am in the apartment, the more it is likely that I'll be fully alive when we get in the house. Yeah. The more fully alive I am here now with imperfect people in an imperfect place, the more likely I will be fully alive when we go on vacation for a week. The more fully alive I am without the renovation, the more fully alive I'll be after the renovation. This renovation will not fix me.
Yes.
And there is not a mountain of Amazon boxes large enough waiting for me on my front porch to fill the empty space that is in me. And so I call it the school of contentment. Because in another place, Paul would say, I have learned to be content.
Yeah.
I think that's pivotal. It's not just that some people have the contentment DNA and others don't. Yes. I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. And by the way, those words were written by an inmate.
Yes.
He was not where he wanted to be. It's during a house arrest, imprisonment. And he goes, I had to learn to be content, whatever the circumstances. And so contentment is not gained by getting what we want. Contentment, we arrive at contentment through having this joy and peace and being alive, even when we don't get what we want. And I think it positions us to have extreme joy if the day comes and when the day comes when we do get what we want. I think it's a powerful, powerful force.
It sure is. Boy, we could finish right there, and we've learned everything we need here and now, not there and then, but we're going to keep going. Jeff, let's talk about the comparison trap. You talk about comparison as a major barrier to contentment. Why is comparison in particular so spiritually damaging, and why do you think we struggle with it so much?
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt, I don't know if he actually said it, but he's credited as saying comparison is a thief of joy. And so I don't know whether Teddy Roosevelt said it, but I believe it's true because, Rob, there's always someone with a bigger boat.
Yes.
A better landscaped yard.
That's right.
A longer 5-star vacation. And what comparison does is it causes my heart to focus on what is being withheld rather than focusing on the blessings that are bombarding my life day after day after day. And by the way, if this was a problem 30 years ago, multiply that by 10 now.
That's right.
Because of social media.
Yes.
Because I'm no longer comparing my life to somebody else's life. I'm comparing my life to somebody else's image crafting.
Yes.
And so not my reality to their reality, but my reality to my impression of their reality.
That's
and
right.
It can shrivel the heart and it can kill generosity. Because generosity comes from this sense of abundance.
Yes.
That I am given much. Abundance meaning more than enough. I have more than enough. That's the fountain from which generosity flows. And so when I am looking around at my life and I go, not enough, not enough, not enough, it will cripple generosity and it will cripple joy.
Oh, so good. Let's go there next because you're right. Giving, we say, often breaks money's grip over our lives and over our hearts. Why is that so powerful?
Well, it's interesting. That famous passage, it's my key passage on how to deal with my wealth in an appropriate way. 1 Timothy, where Paul writes to the younger pastor, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. And then Rob, right after that, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to give.
Yes.
And I think that be generous and willing to give, what Paul is pointing at there is that when we open our hands, it is a reflection of the generosity of God, the God who was generous first in creation and in Christ. And as we begin to reflect his generosity, wealth can begin to lose its stranglehold as the source of joy and identity in my life.
Wow. Well, Jeff, no doubt we want this for ourselves. We also want this for our kids. We have just a minute left. How do we begin to pass this down, this deeper legacy of living a truly satisfied life?
I thought this was important as a dad, and now we have, 5 grandchildren now.
Yeah.
And I think it's what's caught. Values are caught. And I just hope that my children and grandchildren observe that Chris and I, that our greatest joy is not new and better stuff.
Yeah,
that's
right.
just a story too small.
Yeah.
And I hope they can see the source of the lives of generosity that we pursue, and that is that it just imitates the generosity of God for us. When we are generous, it's like it's reflecting the DNA of Christ that's been implanted within us.
Oh, Jeff, man, incredible stuff. Listen, folks, if you want to read Jeff's article in the latest issue of our Faithful Steward magazine, consider becoming a FaithFi partner at faithfi.com/give to receive your copy each quarter directly to your mailbox. My friend, it's truly been a pleasure.
So grateful, Rob, for these moments.
That's Pastor Jeff Manion. The article is called Discovering the Power of Contentment in the latest issue of our Faithful Steward magazine. Just visit faithfi.com/give to learn more about becoming a FaithFi partner. Back with your calls at 800-525-7000 right after this.
The opinions offered during this program represent the personal or professional opinions of the participants, given for informational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to replace advice from a financial, medical, legal, or other professional who understands your specific situation.
Man, what a treat to have my friend Jeff Manion in the studio today. Check out his book, Satisfied, wherever you buy books. This is such an important topic. You know, contentment is one of God's big ideas related to money that just kind of leaps off the page in God's word. Yes, we're to be generous, but we're also to be content. You know, the Apostle Paul talked about learning to be content no matter what situation we find ourselves in. And today, what a great reminder about being fully present here and now, and not always looking forward to the there and then when we think things might be better on the other side. Well, we want to take your calls and questions today. That number to call, 800-525-7000. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and get into whatever's on your mind today. Again, lines are open. We'll be taking your calls throughout the remainder of the broadcast. Again, 800-525-7000. You can call right now. We'll head to the Wichita here in just a moment to dive in. First, though, in the news, a bipartisan housing law aims to increase supply and improve affordability. Experts, though, are cautioning that relief will take time. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act became law over the weekend, and it seeks to reduce regulatory barriers, encourage zoning reform, expand financing, also limit additional home purchases by large institutional investors. The law also broadens the definition of manufactured housing. That potentially lowers construction costs and creates a 4-year pilot program to support mortgages under $100,000 through lender subsidies and borrower assistance. These measures come as home prices remain near record highs, really strong demand, a struggle with inventory. I'll talk about that in a moment. And as you know, mortgage rates exceeding 6.5%, which over the long term is pretty typical, but over the last 10 to 20 years, well, that feels really high, like twice what we got used to in the high 2s and mid 3s. That's just creating more challenges. Why are home prices near record highs? Well, we still face as a nation an estimated shortage of about 4 million homes. Experts say the law addresses important barriers. Those include some I've mentioned: permitting delays, financing constraints, land use restrictions. However, housing construction depends heavily on local zoning, labor, land, and infrastructure, so any affordability gains are likely to emerge gradually. Nevertheless, hopefully a step in the right direction. All right, let's dive into some phone calls today. That number, 800-525-7000. We've got lines open. We're ready for you. You can call right now. Let's begin in Kansas. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, Rob. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
And today I've got a mortgage question, just like you were mentioning.
Okay.
And because of the high cost of housing, high mortgage rates, my daughter is in the market for a house. And like my parents did for my wife and I 40 years ago, I'd like to do for my daughter to be the private lender, meaning that as a buyer, she has 20% to put down, which is a good amount. And even with that and a conventional rate, it's a pretty high payment. And I've been blessed, my wife and I have been blessed to be able to have some extra money that we could loan her. And I done a little research because things have changed in 40 years a little bit since we had our loan with my parents. But what I've looked up is that the IRS has published monthly, they do publish monthly, something they call the applicable federal rate.
Yeah.
And for June, that rate for loans greater than 10 years is 4.98% annually. And that's a little bit less than what you just mentioned. So it would save her some money, and for us to have loan to be earning 5%, that's a good amount, good return from my standpoint. So I've created, you can get amortization schedules quite easily online today. So we've looked at that. I also know that in doing this, there would be the requirement to file an IRS Form 1098, and that form would, copy A would go to the IRS, copy B would go to my daughter so that she would be able to report the interest that she paid during the year. And then we would report interest on our tax return in the form of a 1099 INT. But I've looked at the IRS and they regulations, and they talk about buyer financing, but they never mention a private loan. So I'm assuming it works the same way.
Yeah. Really helpful and some great background information. And I love what you're trying to do here with your daughter, because you're right. This is really challenging. And, we often think about giving an inheritance at death. And yet, if we think about it, the real power of helping out a child comes probably in this season of life where they're trying to make that first home purchase. So somebody has the ability to do that. You certainly don't want to hinder their ability to provide for themselves. But at the same time, making a gift for many people, again, if you can afford it, and a lot of people can't, maybe somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000, maybe a little bit more, to be able to help them get into a home, or something like this where you're just kind of privately lending the money and charging 0%, which again is a huge benefit because it keeps that payment more affordable. What a great use of the money God has entrusted to you. So I'm on board with this. When we come back from this break, Paul, I'll give you my thoughts, because you're right. That AFR, the applicable federal rate, comes in. You've got to decide whether you're going to put it in writing. I'm going to tell you you should. And if you don't charge the interest, you got to consider it a gift. All that straight ahead. Stay with us. Great to have you with us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. We're taking your calls and questions today. The number 800-525-7000. Before the break, we were talking to Paul in Wichita. He and his wife have the ability to help out their daughter with a private loan to get into a home. And they're just wondering what they need to know about structuring that. He's done some research and has been reading about the applicable federal rate, the minimum interest rate the IRS allows on private loans, including loans between family members. There are some best practices here. I think the first one is around that interest, because, in order for this to be seen as legitimate, you're right, depending on the term, whether it's 3 years or less, or midterm 3 to 9 years, or long-term 9 years or more, that annual AFR, or the applicable federal rate, the minimum interest rate, has to be somewhere between 4 and basically 5%. But you can go below that. So, for instance, you could do a 0%. You would just need to treat that as a gift. Because the IRS would see that as money that you forego as a gift to your daughter. And if you got above the annual gift exclusion, although you probably wouldn't, because you can go up to $38,000 to any one individual between you and your wife for 2026, then, if you went above that, you'd have to report it, but it's just an informational reporting. There's no tax due. But below that, you could just consider that a gift, and that would be fine. You would want to talk to your CPA about it just to make sure it's structured properly, but you likely wouldn't even have Form 1098, because if you're an individual not in the business of lending, making a one-off loan to a family member, and you generally do not have to use Form 1098. So you would just need to make sure you report anything over the annual gift exclusion. Now, your intent may be, no, I'm not looking to get this down to 0. I kind of like the idea of her paying 4%. She's got a little skin in the game here, and but we're still helping her because she's not up at 6.5 or 7 as a new borrower. That's ultimately your call as to what your intent is. But beyond that, you need to make sure you have some other pieces in place. I would say everything needs to be in writing. A promissory note that spells out the loan, the interest rate, the payment schedule, the length of the loan. You're going to want to secure the loan typically by a recorded deed, although you don't have to as long as you have everything in writing with the promissory note. And then you would, want to think about the what ifs, because the last thing you'd want would be a damage to the relationship if the loan, even though she may have the desire to pay it on time, let's just say something happens in her life out of her control. What happens then? And, we certainly want to have that all spelled out, just so there's not unmet expectations there inadvertently. But let me stop there and get your thoughts on that, Paul.
Oh, yeah, that's good information. And yes, 40 years ago, when we had a loan from my parents, we did put it in writing, had it recorded at the Register of Deeds office. And then when we paid it off, we filed a release of mortgage, and we did report the interest that we paid my parents, and then they reported the interest that they received on their taxes. So
yes,
it sounds like it's pretty much the same. Watch, like you say, watch out, decide what you want to do, how you want to lend that to her. But I hadn't really thought about the gift portion, because it's like $19,000 per person per year, right? That you can gift to.
That's right. Yeah, and so a married couple could give any one individual $38,000 as a gift. So you can choose to make it a 0% loan, or even forgive the interest as a gift. The IRS treats the foregone interest as though you received it and then gave it back. And if that amount exceeds the annual gift tax exclusion, you need to file the gift tax return 709. But again, it's not taxable.
Okay. Oh, well, this is good information. And I'm sure the listeners, there are some people out there that could also do this for family members. So it's really a blessing to have the extra funds that you can, like you mentioned before, help out before you pass away. So that's what we're trying to do.
That's right. And I think the key here is, one other thing just to make sure I'm clear, is that although it would be considered a gift, the IRS basically uses that applicable federal rate to essentially treat it as if you received that. So you have to pay it income tax on it, because it's considered interest income, actually, even though you never received the cash. And then it's as if you got it, pay the tax on it as interest, and then turn around and gave it back through the annual gift tax exclusion, if that makes sense.
Oh, there's a little bit of a hoop you have to jump through there.
That's right, because they want to get paid on the interest income that you should have charged, that you're choosing to now give back and essentially rebate to her.
Yeah, okay, yes, of course they want their tax.
Yeah. So I love the idea. Let's just make sure everything's in writing, documented. Let's get with your CPA and get everything squared away. But I think at the end of the day, this is a great idea, Paul, and one that, hopefully a lot of folks will take advantage of to help out this next generation if they're in a position to do that. So long as, housing prices are where they are and things are very difficult. Homes are difficult to get into, especially for somebody just starting out. Hey, God bless you, sir. Call anytime if we can help. Let's go to Cleveland. Jeff, how can we help?
Hi. Unfortunately, late on my taxes for last year. So I called and they gave me an extension. I think it's due now in September or October or something like that. And when I go ahead and I call various individuals, they're talking about over $600 to do my taxes. And that's a pretty penny. I have a ministry, a C503 nonprofit organization, and I support families in Ethiopia. And $600 could buy a lot of food. Yeah, and I'm hoping that I could find someone that could do the taxes for less.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe a CTK advisor would be able to do such things.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. And, there are plenty of CKs that do pro bono work that's just not on any, predictable basis. So I would not be able to say just call any CK and they would be able to do this free. It would be up to each individual advisor to determine, how and when they do pro bono work. I would say a more consistent approach would be, there is an IRS volunteer income tax assistance program, VITA for short, and they offer free tax prep. If you've got low to moderate income, AARP Foundation has a tax aid where they'll do free tax prep. There's also IRS Free File if your income qualifies. So, I would look at some of those options. Again, it's the IRS Vita program. You could go to AARP or look for IRS Free File. I would say those would probably be your best options to start with. And let's see if you can't get it done through one of those services, especially if your income is low, you may qualify for these services. Jeff, we appreciate your call. Sounds like you're doing great work, my friend, overseas. Keep up that. And if you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks for calling today. We're going to take a break. Back with our final segment after this. 800-525-7000 is the number to call. We'd love to tackle your financial question, whether it's debt repayment, giving, taxes, or Social Security. Call right now. We'll be right back. I'm so thankful you've joined us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. We're taking your calls and questions. I've got some lines open in addition to those holding at the moment. If you have a financial question, we'll try to get it in right here in this segment. Just call right now, 800-525-7000. Again, that number is 800-525-7000. You can call right now. Let's go to Birmingham. Craig, go ahead.
So, I have a question about a K-1 tax form within an IRA investment.
Okay.
How do I handle that within an IRA?
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, let me just back up for a second. An MLP, a master limited partnership, is in fact a partnership, not a corporation. So that means the partnership itself doesn't pay federal income tax. Instead, the income, the deductions, credits, any other tax items pass through to you and as the investor. Now, this comes up a lot just as a point of confusion whenever somebody owns an MLP, a master limited partnership, because of this difference in taxation. So the key points that you'd want to know would be, first of all, that instead of that 1099 DIV for a dividend, when you own a stock, you're going to get the Schedule K-1. That reports your share of the partnership's taxable income. And ultimately, the cash distributions are often not immediately taxable, but they're typically considered a return of capital that then reduces, and this gets a little complicated, but it reduces your tax basis in the investment. And then normally, when you eventually sell it, that lower basis results in a larger taxable gain, and part of that gain may be taxed as ordinary income. Again, we're getting a little complicated here. So, one of the downsides, though, to the K-1 is they often arrive later than a 1099, so that delays your filing and that can catch you off guard. Now, with an IRA, you can own an MLP, but there's one important tax issue, and it's called unrelated business taxable income, UBTI. And so, unlike most stocks and mutual funds, the MLP generate this UBTI, and if the total from all the MLPs in your IRA go above the threshold set by the IRS for the year, then the IRA may owe tax, not you personally. And so on that K-1, it will report that amount, and then you'll need to look at the filing threshold. Typically, the IRA custodian that holds the account is going to file the required tax return, and then it pays any tax from the assets in the IRA, not from your personal funds. And, if you have a small MLP position, most investors don't ever exceed that threshold. If you have a larger position or you own several MLPs, then of course you certainly could. So, typically people will buy master limited partnerships, inside taxable accounts as a general rule of thumb, where you can benefit from their tax characteristics more so than an IRA, where you lose a lot of that generally, and then that UBTI can create some complexity. Does that make sense, though?
Yeah, it's clear as mud.
Sure. And it's why do you do your own taxes?
I do not.
Okay. So your CPA can walk you through this, but essentially what you would do is just hand off that K-1, and the CPA can take it from there. But just know that you're not going to get it as timely as the 1099. So you're just going to have to wait it out. And then once you get it, give it to your CPA. But essentially, the only thing you need to be concerned about with an IRA is that UBTI and whether you're going to go over that threshold from the IRS, and that's going to be reported on that K-1. So you'll know ultimately whether you did.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll get with my local CPA and we'll go from there. Thanks for the info.
Absolutely, Craig. Thanks for your call today. We appreciate you being on the program. 800-525-7000 is the number to call. We'd love to tackle your financial questions today, and we'll get to as many as we can between now and the end of the program. Let's go to Cleveland. Jerry, how can I help you?
Yeah. My question, I have money in the bank, and then just let it sit. What's a good thing to do? CDs, and how do I keep spending unnecessary money?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is I'm glad you put your finger on that, Jerry, because, it can be really easy for us not to spend based on a plan that reflects what's most important to us, our values, and just kind of in the absence of a plan, just let money kind of slip through our fingers. And what we know is that as stewards of God's money, you and I are money managers for the King of Kings, and it belongs to him. And so it's a high calling that you and I have, which means we need to be careful stewards of God's money. Does that mean we can't enjoy it? No, not at all. I think part of why God entrusts to us what he does is for our enjoyment. Think about a meal, out with friends or family, and just what a wonderful time that is to deepen relationships. Well, money makes that possible, and that's, I think, one of God's gifts. But at the same time, we need to be careful not just to, allow money to kind of just flow through us into frivolous spending without being intentional. And I think that's why every steward of God's money needs a plan where we say, prayerfully, what do I have coming in and how do I live within God's provision and make sure that the way I spend God's money lines up with God's heart, that I should be giving, and that I should take a portion of what I get and put it aside for the future. And that I should, cover my obligations and the things that I've committed to. And I shouldn't live beyond my means and take on debt. And we really can't do that without a spending plan, or what some people call a budget. And so that really is the starting point. And I think the extent to which you find yourself spending without a plan, spending on things that you might look back and say, I don't even know where that money went, or maybe that was frivolous, I think that is just as much of a heart issue as anything else. You remember Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so, one of the things I'd like to do for you, Jerry, is to send you a copy of my devotional, Our Ultimate Treasure. And I wonder if you would be willing to take the next 21 days and just start your day each morning and letting the scripture from God's word just wash over you around what it looks like to live as a faithful steward. And I believe you'll come out on the other side of that 21 days different, not because of me or anything I've put on the page, but because of God's word and the power of the living and active word of God. And perhaps that could be a starting point in a heart change that will result in action change that ultimately needs to manifest itself in a budget and a spending plan where you're living within your means. We're moving toward getting out of debt, at least all the consumer debt that you have, like credit cards, and then making sure that what you're spending on is really well thought out and it's a true reflection of what's most important to you. But let me stop there, Jerry, and just get your thoughts on that.
That sounds good. I have credit cards. I have money. That's another question. Money I have in the bank and what my credit cards, they probably like $3,000. should I pull money out the bank and get those paid off?
Jerry, I want you certainly to stay current on those, and our friends at Christian Credit Counselors could help. You could go to christiancreditcounselors.org if you're comfortable on the web. If you're not, you could stay on the line, and our team will help you get the phone number for Christian Credit Counselors to call them. But they're going to get your interest rates down, and you'll pay one monthly payment to them instead of the creditors, and then they'll pass it along. The reason I'm not encouraging you to pull that money out of savings right now is I want you to get a handle on this budget first. I want you to get to a place where for several months you're living within your means and you're living on a spending plan. And you've demonstrated that you can do that with effectiveness, because what I don't want is for you to pull the money out, pay off the credit cards, and then call me back 3 months later and say, guess what, Rob? Well, now instead of $30,000, I have $25,000, but the credit cards are back. And so I want you to get the spending under control first. And then if you want to pay off the credit cards and you have enough in savings to do that, then I'd be all for it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hang on the line. My team will get you connected with Christian Credit Counselors. They'll give you the phone number. And if you just hold the line, we'll take care of that. Thanks for calling today, Jerry. God bless you, my friend. Let's head to Florida, where we'll finish today. Elizabeth, I have just a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Hi. I just have a question about RMDs. If I take my distribution, and it's about $10,000, and I would like to have other options than just the Roth IRA, to avoid maximum taxation on it.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the Roth, you would have to have earned income, not passive income, earned income from wages or self-employment. Are you working?
No.
Okay. So you would not be able to put that RMD as it comes out of the IRA into a Roth without the earned income. The only way you can get money from an IRA to a Roth without earned income is a conversion, but that doesn't count toward your required minimum. So really at that point, you would either just put it in savings. If you didn't have, your emergency savings, you could put it in a taxable brokerage account. If it's savings, you could put it in a high yield savings or money market. If you don't need the money, though, one option is, because you're over 70 and a half, Elizabeth, you could do a qualified charitable distribution. So you could essentially, whatever that required minimum is for the year, you could have it sent straight from your IRA to your church or any other charity, perhaps one that you were already supporting out of your checking or savings, but do it out of the IRA instead. And what you would do is you'd satisfy the RMD, do the same giving you were already planning on doing, and it doesn't get added to your taxable income. So you'd save on taxes. Does that make sense?
Well, I need that money to survive on, though. I can't give it away, unfortunately.
All right. So if it's money, so then we don't want to invest it. So if you're pulling it out to live on it, I'd just put it in your checking or your savings account. Make sure you develop that spending plan and get a little interest on it and then use it according to your spending plan. Hope that helps. Thanks for your call today. Faith and Finance Live is a partnership between Moody Radio and Faith 5. My team today, Josh, Tahira, Taylor, Omar, and everybody here at Faith 5. We'll see you tomorrow.